hand too much. Sometimes if I have to double the guitar part or do something along with the guitar that the bass will be too much for, I'll do it as a harmonic. It helps me to be able to play a note that's very high-pitched, very thin, and cuts through everything. And with a little bit of distortion, as you notice, it cuts through even more. So that's what a pinch harmonic is. Here's a technique I actually got from piano players, oddly enough. I encourage bass players to listen to all kinds of musicians, not just bass players, especially drummers, but piano players in particular, I stole this from. Basically, you see a piano player play an octave where they set their fingers an octave apart, so the low and high note, and they can bounce up and down the piano, play melody lines, and move around like that. So what I do is I basically do the same thing. There's the high C, there's the octave. So when I play them both together, I have my fingers kind of locked together so that this thing stays in the same position. If it moves, I'll miss and hit the wrong note. And then I'll do the same thing down here. C, C again, and then play some rudimentary drum thing. You can move it around also. Which may or may not be of value to you, unless you're in the middle of a song and you've been playing it for a long time and the only note you can play is the G. A little transition piece, maybe you possibly do that. You can also do it in fifths, fourth, or any interval you can imagine. Learn some drum rudiments from your drummer. Always, I encourage bass players to learn as much as they can about drums, but learn a few drum rudiments that you can. Just a way to borrow from another instrument, adapt it to your bass, and get creative with it and use it in any way you can possibly imagine. I often get a question about who my influences are because of this oddball bunch of techniques I came up with here. Who could have possibly influenced that? But actually there have been a lot of influences that I would like to pay tribute to. I get this question a lot, so that's why I wanted to address it. Initially, of course, Paul McCartney with the Beatles. This is very, very popular music when I was very, very young. And Paul McCartney moved all over the neck and played a lot. He was a singer also. And most singing bass players, Paul McCartney, Phil Lynott, Geddy Lee, Doug Pinnick, guys who sing and play bass, Sting, usually have a really cool melodic sense to their bass lines. All those aforementioned bass players are an influence on me, but Paul McCartney, especially in the beginning, he was moving around the neck a lot. And if you listen to a song like A Little Help from My Friends, the main moving melodic instrument in the whole piece is the bass. It's flying all over the place and it's working with the vocal lines. Another guy that was like that was Jamie Jamerson, who played a lot of Motown bass on a lot of Motown records, and he was all over the place. And in many of those records, you barely hear the guitar, but the bass is flying all over the place. And it was a good precursor to what we have now as drum and bass music. The bass being very, very important and essential to laying down a melody and a movement underneath the whole song. And since it's such low frequency, so powerful, it changes things around quite a bit. Then the whole rock thing that I got into as a very, very young kid. Paul Samwell Smith from the Yardbirds, big influence on me. He did some amazing licks that he did. Jack Cassidy from original Jefferson Airplane and then Jefferson Starship was an amazing player, incredible distortion all over the place. Jack Bruce from Cream, huge influence. John Entwistle. Later on during the Jaco and Stanley years, Jaco and Stanley, Jaco Pastorius and Stanley Clarke were also huge influences to me. But also, as I said before regarding some of my techniques that were taken from other instruments, piano was a big influence on me, and keyboards, because just due to the nature of the way they could play things on keyboards, it was a big challenge to me to play it on bass. Oscar Peterson, a lot of classical stuff. I was into Debussy, Ravel, Sonny Rollins sax, as a sax player, was a big influence on me. Later on, guitar players were a big influence, but as I said, all instruments were. Drummers were a huge influence on me too. The first time I saw Billy Cobham play blew my mind. Right now, in a band I have called Niacin, Dennis Chambers is the drummer. And though it is relatively recent in my career, Dennis has been one of the biggest influences to me in my music and in my life, because I consider him the greatest musician I've ever worked with. He's a genius with time and groove, and has taught me so much. So it never ends what the influences are. And there's a long list, and I probably left out, maybe 200 or 300 other people that are a big, important influence to me. An example of some of the things that happen with those influences, like flamenco guitar, Paco de Lucia. Huge influence on me. I love that guy, and I love his playing. When I hear him do these explosions with his fingers, I couldn't do it like that on the bass, so I ended up strumming the bass. I can't strum it like he strums it, but I can strum it in a way to mimic it. So there you see a relatively dissimilar instrument with a whole set of techniques on its own that you can take and borrow and use on the bass. As I showed you the piano technique, chordally, I play a 12-string guitar and listen to a lot of acoustic guitarists, and try to get that note in there at some point. If I can arpeggiate. I'm plucking all the way across. Kind of a guitar technique, and it actually, believe it or not, it's a little bit of a harp technique too, a stand-up harp. I've seen some harp players play, and they have all these techniques that are very similar, and they have some similar approaches to it. So the lesson here is let everything be an influence, as long as it's a good one, and you can learn something from every instrument and every style of music. So I encourage people to drop the barriers, or remove the blinders, and not just listen to the one type of music that you love, but try to get into a lot of different styles. It's helped me in my playing a lot to be into many different things, from Motown to Sinatra to super ultra heavy death metal to fusion, or you name it. All those things helped me in some way musically, and all those things were an influence on me as a player. So, we went over a lot of things today. A couple of fine points about the bass, the amp, how it works together, how over the years I've made this kind of symbiotic relationship between the two, how they affect me, how they affect my hands. Then I illustrated some licks to show how all that stuff works together in one unified equation to come up with some bass stuff, and explain some influences as far as where it came from. So we covered a lot. I just want to say in conclusion that this is a very proprietary thing. In other words, very fine-tuned to me, myself, my character, my personality, and playing style. And so it may not necessarily reflect what you are into, or what you want to do, or what you play. And of course, you don't necessarily want to play what I do, because you're an individual yourself and should have your own style, and you will eventually, I'm sure. But I think by illustrating all these points, and you can see this logical progression that has gone on over the years with how the bass went to 2 pickups and then the 2 amps, and what the compression does, and how that all fits in with my hands, and the hammer-ons, and all the little techniques that I came up with over the year. You see there a progression of ideas and a fine-tuning and tweaking of this whole thing called bass playing, as it refers to one individual, myself. Now, take that same set of steps, those same equations, not with the same component parts, of course, because it's you and not me. And you'll see that over the years they will come together and result in a style and an ability that is uniquely yours. What we illustrated here today was just how it happens with one particular individual. Now that same thing should happen with you. As you do gigs and do shows and play in bands and go from style to style and band to band, and whatever your course of ascension is as a bass player, you'll see how going through all this stuff, at least seeing one person do it, at least this will maybe help you avoid some pitfalls, fine-tune you into being able to discover exactly what's right for you sooner than it took me. And that's the whole idea, is we can kind of jumpstart the whole process for you to be able to reach and achieve your goals as a player sooner. I've been playing for over 30 years, and I would have liked to have known this stuff in the first 5 or 10. So if that's of some help to you, then we certainly have accomplished what we have. So I want to wish you the best of luck with this. I know the music business is tough. It's not easy, but it's so rewarding to sit here and just play my bass. Sometimes I go up on my rooftop and just all by myself with no recording on or nothing, and just I really love to play and I really enjoy it, and it's been an incredible part of my life, and I hope it becomes just as incredible for your life, and I wish you the best and see you around. Thanks a lot.